So glad you could join us right here in Saga 960. And we have Miles Christen on the line. He's with Wisconsin International Radio. Miles, welcome to the show.
Morning.
So your president is undergoing a trial. He's in Davos talking up trade with the UK. I guess presumably listening to what Greta has to say, although he's probably playing with his phone while she's talking. I don't think he's taking her overly seriously. But talk a little bit about this impeachment hearing, this proceeding that's going on. Is it more circus? Is it? Please speak about that.
It's just it's gonna backfire, and like I said before, I think there's impeachable things that every one of the presidents, at least in my lifetime, have done. I don't think this situation with Ukraine was the issue which you could have gone after impeachment for. It's kind of funny that, it's serious, but it's almost kind of humorous that, once the whole thing happened more recently with Iran, they got really upset with Trump when, he was doing military actions without congressional approval that, and you could argue would be impeachable years ago, but the Democrats are pretty okay with militarism and this sort of aggressive foreign policy. So, the Democrats were okay with aggressive foreign policy at first,
Yeah, well, some of the analysis I'm hearing is that some of the Democrats have pretty much given up on trying to defeat Trump in the election. And so this is in part a way of discrediting him in order to try and win both the Senate and the House and possibly push through impeachment again. If they had control of the Senate, then their chances of success might be a little bit better. But if not that, then certainly hobbling his agenda, his economic agenda, and anything else that he wants to do. What do you think? Is that a possibility here?
Well, over the next year, with the election and everything, we don't know what's going to happen. The Democrats could theoretically lose the Congress. They could gain the Senate, but it's not enough to just simply have that 51 Senate majority. They would need something like 67 senators in order to actually be able to get an impeachment. And there's so many people I know who don't like Trump, who don't really know much about the impeachment process. And I've said this before. All these people I know in the United States who don't like Trump, they don't even know who's running besides. They know about Biden, they know about Sanders and Warren and Buttigieg. Beyond that, they probably can't name one or two. Maybe they know Andrew Yang. But, right now there are actually still 12 Democrats running for president, and most of the Americans can't, name more than 4 of them.
Is Biden still favored, or I'm hearing stories about Sanders surging, and now he has come out and said no, he doesn't have any worries that he's going to be somehow cheated again like he was last time around 2015 when he ran against Hillary Clinton, and we know that was rigged. Is it possible that he will be denied again by some of the people who think he's too extreme, even within the context of the Democrats, which have moved so far left, and yet there are people like some of Obama's support. Apparently Obama himself, not a big fan of Sanders, certainly doesn't want him representing the party. What's the dynamic there?
I absolutely think that Bernie Sanders could be robbed of the nomination again. In 2016, Bernie Sanders was robbed of the nomination. Now, in 2020, Tulsi Gabbard was essentially robbed of any chance of getting the nomination, and it wasn't just the way the DNC treated her, it was the way the media treated her. Literally Saturday Night Live depicted her as this villain, like Cruella de Vil. Sanders could definitely be robbed of the nomination, even if he, for instance, wins the majority of the primaries. The Democrats have this kind of back and forth weird system of we got rid of the superdelegates, but not actually. And then at the same time, there's the whole what could happen at the convention that they're having here in Milwaukee. I think it's called Brokers Convention could theoretically happen, where they just decide not count any of the primaries and then just do a vote there of the people attending the convention could actually pick the candidate there.
It's looking less and less likely that Hillary's going to get in, right? Or am I wrong? I mean, could she still stunningly make an entrance here and hijack the...
Looking less and less likely. What really doesn't make much of any sense is that if you turn on, I don't know what it's like over, north of the border and everything, but if you turn on YouTube ads, or you see YouTube ads or TV ads constantly here, you are seeing Michael Bloomberg ads every single day, and it's just this, like, Michael Bloomberg's the guy who can get things done. I don't know if I mentioned this. In one of the ads, he wears this leather jacket. It's got a almost military design to it. I mean, that's literally the look the company goes for. They have this fighter jacket kind of look to them, and it's like Bloomberg's trying to give people this image like he's a Navy vet or a military vet when he's not. But Bloomberg has not been in any of the debates, and yet he is running ads all day.
So he's carpet bombing the airwaves with obviously Bloomberg ads. Is it going to have much of an impact? I mean, we've seen, for instance, Tom Steyer's still in the race, apparently. I mean, what's he run? I mean, he's a non-entity. Here's a multi-billionaire who seems to have...
The funny thing about Tom Steyer is nobody talks about all the gentrification he has done to San Francisco. Nobody talks about when 2016, when that whole Project Veritas thing came out about the Democrats who were talking about inciting violence at Trump rallies and so forth, and the group that did it. Tom Steyer is the guy who was behind that group that was trying to, cause a ruckus at these Trump rallies and so forth. And nobody in the media is making that connection that Tom Steyer was the figurehead behind that whole Project Veritas controversy from 2016. But Tom Steyer is interesting because I've talked to a lot of people who've taken these like online polls, and it turns out that their Democrat values actually kind of line up with Tom Steyer somewhat. I mean, he does favor term limits. I don't like Tom Steyer, but I'm going to say he's not the worst of the Democrats that's running.
Well, speaking of Project Veritas, what did you think of this expose of this Bernie Sanders supporter who came out and started talking about rounding up Trump supporters and possibly having a bunch of people exterminated if they weren't on side with the kind of Stalinist future of the United States once.
Last time we were talking about how, why is it that there's a difference between Bernie Sanders supporters and non-Democrat voting socialists or your progressives, and there are all these differences. And actually, last night I had a really long talk with a Bernie Sanders supporter, and it's like, he's a nice guy. I like this person. He's, great person, happens to support Bernie Sanders, and it's like there's a huge range of Bernie Sanders supporters from like not that politically involved and happens to like Sanders to the more crazy. And you got to admit, there are crazy Trump supporters out there too. And there are these similarities between Trump and Bernie where they attract a wide range of different types of supporters. But, you deal with in Madison, you can definitely find some very strange and crazy Bernie supporters that aren't that much different probably from that guy.
But this guy's a staffer. Like, he's a paid staffer on the Bernie team. And I've not heard whether he's been turfed or fired or anything like that. Maybe he has.
Like I said, I'm not surprised because, the Bernie staffers I met out here in Madison, they would have this stand at the farmer's market, and I tried to ask them simple questions about Bernie's accepting of military contributions, and they literally called the police for doing so. I mean, you're in a farmer's market with a booth, and people come up to you with a camera and say, "Hey, where do you guys stand on this issue?" And then you call the police. It's like, at least in the United States, you have the right to film in public. If you're going to go out in public with a political agenda, you should be accepting of the fact that people are going to try to ask you questions, and they might have a camera, and And even the police, they'd come and they'd be like, well, you're not breaking the law. It's like, thank you, officer.
Yeah, well, when they start hauling you off just for asking a question, then you've turned into a police state and it's over. But what's going on in Virginia? I suppose the media did its best to portray these 22,000 people who showed up to protest in that pro-firearms rally as a bunch of white nationalist redneck crazies.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be a pretty peaceful protest. But does it have any chance of having an impact in Virginia, where I guess you've got both houses in Democrat control?
I don't know if these people were having a rally specifically yesterday because there was legislation going on yesterday. I mean, I think it's MLK Day. So to have any sort of rally on that day other than something in remembrance of MLK is not something I'm in favor of. I'm also not in favor of them holding legislation. If they're, say, for instance, trying to have a vote on that specific day because they think people won't be able to protest that vote on that day, that's also bad. But, I do think in the United States there are certain days it's kind of like, all right, this should be reserved for this specific day, and the media coverage is definitely very skewed to paint people in a certain light. It kind of almost reminds me of when we used to have those Tea Party rallies in the United States, and then they'd come out for maybe they believed in smaller government or whatever, and then the media wanted to paint them all as one little box. And there needs to be more discussion about what these people actually believe in versus just, they all fit in this little box here,
Yeah, meantime, the Occupy Wall Street guys were treated with kid gloves, they're all heroic, right?
Hey, I mean, the Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party movement on certain fundamental levels have similarities. They both wanted more transparency in government to some level. They both saw that the economic system wasn't working in their favor. Unfortunately, in the United States, the Occupy Wall Street movement, I think, helped Obama get reelected, and I think the Tea Party movement ended up helping to promote a lot of politicians who ended up voting for things like the National Defense Authorization Act, which says that people can be locked up without trial or charge.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times in the United States, these movements get co-opted for the benefit of one of the two major political parties, and then the very people protesting they got kind of the opposite of what they wanted in the end. But, if we bring up Occupy Wall Street, you got to talk about Mayor Bloomberg, the guy running for president, who was, so draconian when it came to how he treated those protesters. That's the funny thing about it. Him running for president, no one talks about the horrible things he did to those protesters during the Occupy Wall Street protests.
Good point. Miles Christen, thank you so much. Really appreciate this.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. Miles Christen is with Wisconsin International Radio. Quick time out. Back with more after this.